An 8-year-old girl, a silent forest, and a husky leading her to a buried truth. Alice was an 8-year-old girl, introspective, sensitive, and incredibly perceptive. Since she was born deaf, she had learned to listen to the world with her eyes and her heart. Her parents, Lara and Miguel, lived with her in a small wooden cabin on the outskirts of a cold, isolated village, where snow covered everything for months on end. It was a peaceful place, silent like her, and perhaps that's why Alice felt at home there, between the infinite white of the landscape and the secrets that the wind whispered only to those who really wanted to listen. It was winter, and the cold seemed more cruel than ever. One morning, after a heavy snowfall, Alice went out to explore the nearby forest, as she always did. His attentive eyes observed every detail. That's when he noticed something unusual: footprints, but they weren't just ordinary animal or hunter tracks. There were messy paw prints, as if someone was running or escaping, and next to them, deeper, scratches in the snow, as if something or someone was being dragged. She followed the tracks for several minutes until she reached a clearing. There, huddled among the fallen logs, was a husky Siberiano with his fur standing on end, his body tense and his blue eyes fixed on her. He didn't seem scared, but rather waiting, as if he knew she was coming. At his side, a torn vest with a metal tag hanging from it. Alice approached slowly, sensing that something was wrong, and it wasn't just the cold or the silence. When she lightly touched the dog's paw, he got up with difficulty and began to walk, looking back insistently as if asking her to follow him. Without understanding how, Alice felt that he wanted to show something, and even without words, she responded with a simple gesture. She walked behind him. Instinct said there was a truth hidden under the ice, but what Alice didn't know was that someone else was following those tracks, and not with good intentions. Alice followed the husky into the forest, past gnarled trees and snowdrifts that seemed to hide secrets from the past. The dog walked with firm steps, despite the intense cold and deep snow. He was strong, silent like her, and seemed to know exactly where to go. The connection between them grew with each step, as if they spoke the same language, made up of gestures, looks, and instinct. After a long walk, they reached a ravine partially covered in ice. At the bottom of it was what appeared to be an overturned car, almost completely buried in snow. Alice's eyes widened. He approached carefully and saw marks of blood, torn cloths, and, to his surprise, an ID card half covered in ice with the name Dr. Carmichael. She had heard this name before. He was a scientist who had mysteriously disappeared a few days ago after a storm. The husky growled lowly, as if sensing they weren't alone. Alice looked around, feeling the same discomfort. The trail there was full of footprints, and some were human, heavy, and more recent than the dog's. Suddenly, a snap on the branch made the dog stand in front of her on full alert. From the shadows of the forest, a figure emerged. Mr. Barlow, a rude man, known in the village for his reserved behavior. He wore a heavy coat, and his eyes seemed to search the soul. When he saw Alice, he forced a smile and said in a low voice, trying to sound friendly, Well, it's not safe to walk around here alone, little one." Alice couldn't hear him, but from the movement of his mouth and the husky's tension, she knew something was wrong. He tried to walk away, but Barlow stepped forward, looking at the dog with contempt. He pointed to the vest hanging around the husky's neck. "That dog should be dead, and if you don't want trouble, you'd better forget what you saw." Alice understood enough. His heart sped up. She grabbed the husky's collar and ran back down the trail, the animal running alongside her. Like a tireless guardian, Barlow watched the two disappear into the snow. Then he took out his cell phone and said coldly, "The girl found the car. We need to resolve this now." Alice ran through the forest with her heart racing, the snow whipping her face, and the husky at her side like a living shadow. They didn't need to hear the danger to feel it. It was behind them, pulsing across the icy landscape like a war drum. When she got close to the village, she turned off the main road and took a shortcut hidden between the trees, a path that only she knew. Barlow wouldn't catch them so easily there. She took the husky to an old disused barn at the back of the family property. Inside, he found an old blanket, turned on a portable flashlight, and sat down with the dog beside him, panting. As he stroked his thick fur, he noticed a faint metallic sheen trapped beneath the collar of his vest. It was a small device, similar to a flash drive. When he connected to his father's tablet, he saw that it was encrypted files, scientific data, and voice recordings of Dr. Carmichael. With the help of the tablet's reading software, Alice was able to activate automatic transcription. The screen began to display excerpts from the scientist's diary. In the notes, he talked about research carried out with animals trained to detect seismic signals and underground movements, a secret project financed by a private organization. In the last record, he said he was about to denounce the real financiers after discovering that they were using dogs to locate illegal mineral deposits and that his life was in danger. Alice understood the husky had escaped during the accident, carrying the evidence with him. He wasn't just a survivor. He was the last hope for justice for the missing scientist. But there was more. In one of the video files, the car's camera showed the moment of the accident. There was no snow or ice on the road. The car was pushed on purpose, and Barlow appeared in the corner of the image. Alice covered her mouth, her stomach turning. She knew what she had to do, take this video to the rangers who protected the reserve. But that meant crossing miles of forest, with Barlow and whoever else was involved on his trail. She looked at the husky, who was staring at her firmly. He didn't need orders. I knew the way, and he was ready to protect her, whatever the cost. Alice knew she couldn't wait for the next day. The files he had in his hands were too much evidence to ignore and too dangerous to keep close to the village. She put the flash drive in a small waterproof bag, tucked it under her coat, and prepared for the crossing. The destination was the ranger station, more than 3 miles into the forest, where he might be able to deliver the evidence safely. She wrote a quick note to her parents, explaining that she was fine and would return as soon as she could. He fastened it to the barn wall with a rusty nail, took a deep breath, and set off with the husky at his side. Night had fallen, and with it came a crueler cold. But the girl didn't hesitate. There was something in his gaze now that hadn't been there before: determination. The night forest was an unfamiliar place, even to her. The sounds muffled by the snow, the constantly moving shadows, and the wind that blew long howls gave the environment the air of a dark tale. At several moments, Alice wanted to stop, to go back, but the dog's firm presence at her side was like a reminder that she was not alone. He was the lighthouse in the darkness. Hours later, halfway along the way, she noticed tracks. They weren't hers, nor the dog's. Human steps, big, heavy, and recent. They were being followed. The husky stopped suddenly, ears pricked up. A rustle of branches, a quick silhouette between the trees. Alice instinctively bent down, hugging the dog. For a moment, everything was silent. Then a voice whispered from the darkness, "Give over what you have, and no one will get hurt." It was Barlow. She couldn't run. It would be caught easily. But then he remembered a side trail that led to a cave hidden among the rocks, shelter he used to play in when he was younger. He signaled with his hands to the husky, and the two of them took off through the snow, turning left through the pines. Barlow shouted, running after, but the husky was faster. He led with precision, leading the way as Alice followed as fast as she could. When they reached the cave, they entered in silence. The girl turned off the flashlight, breathing hard, and the dog sat at the door, attentive. There, hidden in the cold, Alice felt fear. Yes, but also strength. For the first time, she didn't want someone to defend her. She wanted to be part of the fight, and I knew it was. Alice remained crouched inside the cave for long minutes, her heart beating as if it wanted to escape her chest. The husky, motionless, at his side, stared blankly at the entrance. The snow was falling harder now, and the wind made the trees groan. Every sound seemed like a warning, a sign that confrontation was near. Barlow didn't scream again. He was outside, calmly searching. He was not an impatient hunter. He was methodical, dangerous, and he knew she was there. Suddenly, footsteps approached. The dog growled lowly, ready to act. Alice held the collar as if she could say, "Not yet." But then his shadow appeared in the doorway, and with it the glow of a flashlight. Barlow had found the trail that led straight to them. "I know it's there, girl," he said, his voice muffled by his coat. "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into. Give it back and I'll let you walk." Alice was silent. Her eyes met those of the husky, who was still watching her. She knew that if she handed over the files, everything would go back under the snow. The accident, Dr. Carmichael's disappearance, the data, everything would be erased, and no one would believe her. She picked up the flash drive with shaking hands, held it up to the filtering flashlight, and made the universal no gesture. Barlow charged forward angrily. "Last chance!" The husky didn't wait for anything else. In an agile and fierce leap, he charged at the man with a low bark. The two rolled in the snow, while Alice ran out of the cave with everything she had. The wind was chopping, but she ran as if the world depended on it, because in a way it did. She ran toward the distant lights of the ranger tower. Behind her there were grunts, growls, and the turning of snow. She didn't look back. He trusted his friend. He would protect her, as he always had. Upon reaching the base, he collapsed into the arms of a guard. Unable to speak, he just opened his coat and showed the flash drive. One of the guards recognized her. "That's the girl from the village. She's deaf. Let's check that out now." Minutes later, as the video began to play on the base's computers, another guard arrived at the door, holding the husky by the collar. He was tired, panting but without a scratch. His eyes met hers, and she knew. They won. In the forest base's command room, the officers watched in silence the video that Alice had managed to rescue. The images were clear. The car being pushed down the embankment, the recorded dialogue, Dr. Carmichael's voice denouncing the illegal use of trained dogs for criminal purposes. Barlow's name appeared several times, linked to illegal mining activities within the nature reserve, using dogs to locate hidden deposits without leaving a trace. Alice watched everything from afar, hugging the husky while the adults discussed. For the first time, no one treated her as the quiet girl in the village. She was now the bridge between what was invisible and what needed to be revealed. That same night, a rescue team was sent into the forest. Barlow was found unconscious, tied up with his own equipment in an improvised rope trap. According to the guards, the dog had knocked the man down and kept him there, protecting the path until Alice escaped. It was the kind of story that sounded far-fetched if it weren't exactly what had happened. Barlow was arrested and prosecuted. Within days, the news spread throughout the village and beyond. 8-year-old deaf girl unmasks criminal network with the help of a mysterious dog. The government recognized the husky and Alice's bravery. She received a Children's Achievement Medal, and he was officially decorated as a service dog, although, as everyone knew, he would never belong on any leash again. Alice was asked to write about her experience in a public letter, which was published in a regional newspaper. In it, he wrote, You don't need to listen to understand what's right. And sometimes the truth lies in those who don't speak, but never fail to protect. His bond with the Husky became unbreakable. He now lived with her, slept next to her bed, accompanied her to school, and sat by her side on the freezing mornings when the world seemed too still. The village began to see her with new eyes, not as a fragile child, but as someone who heard the world in a different way. And precisely because of that, he was able to see what no one else saw. Months have passed since that night when Alice and the Husky changed the fate of a story that seemed doomed to silence. Spring arrived timidly, slowly melting the snowdrifts and revealing trails that now seemed more familiar. The forest, once scary, was now a place where Alice walked with confidence, always accompanied by her inseparable four-legged companion. The Husky was officially named Ghost, chosen by Alice not only for the way he had appeared in her life, like a whisper among the snow, but for how he moved, silent and protective, like an invisible guardian. He never wore a collar. It didn't need to. I walked beside her because I chose to be there, free, faithful, and present. In the village, Alice began to be seen with respect and affection. The children at school looked at her with admiration. The adults greeted her with reverence. But none of that mattered as much as the fact that, for the first time, she felt heard. Not because he started talking, but because he learned to express himself in other ways. With his eyes, with his gestures, with his courage. His relationship with his parents also blossomed. They, who had so often protected her in fear of the world, now let her explore more freely, trusting in her maturity. Lara, her mother, used to say, "You don't just listen to the world with your heart, you teach it to listen back." Alice began to write. Their stories, full of nature, silence, and strength, were published in local newsletters and even on a blog maintained by teachers. In an interview she gave with the help of an interpreter, she said, "Being deaf was never an obstacle. It was my gateway to observing better." One morning, while walking alongside Ghost, Alice stopped at the foot of the old oak tree in the clearing where it all began. She looked at the dog and smiled. "You found me that day, but I think I found you." And the wind blew through the leaves, now green. Ghost looked at the horizon and then at her, as if he understood every word. And then they followed the trail together, because the true sound of life, she knew now, lives in what you feel, not in what you hear.